All right. So John Kerry spoke at a World Economic Forum event last week, where he lamented the inconvenience of the First Amendment in the disinformation age.
I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go, and that people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change.
Okay,
that's a jackboot to the throat right there.
Yeah. Yeah, what he's saying there is that the First Amendment is an obstacle to cracking down on speech in ways that we would like, because now, thanks to the internet, people can pick and choose where they get their information from. And, this ignores the fact, obviously, as our friend Jimmy says all the time, number one, purveyor of misinformation, the United States government. Number two, the mainstream media, which has such a sterling reputation in the eyes of a guy like John Kerry. But he's saying there that because the First Amendment is a block, what we need to do is we need to win the road. We need to give ourselves, what he's saying is we need to win a big enough majority to the point where we have the quote unquote right to govern, meaning we need a mandate to crack down on disinformation. We need a mandate to censor. That's basically what he's saying there. We need to win broad enough support to the point where we can pass bills through that are filibuster-proof, 60-plus votes in the Senate, that give the executive the kind of power that we need the executive to have to censor speech. At that point, the question becomes, what do you do about the courts? Because that Supreme Court there, surely, because they're a right-wing court, they're going to side against the government when it comes to censorship. Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. They ruled in Missouri versus Biden that the government does have the right to, suggest that the social media companies crack down on speech. So this is dystopia playing out right in front of your eyes on the World Economic Forum stage. There really is no fix to this except to rally behind candidates and causes in support of free speech, because they view the First Amendment as an obstacle. And, I'll toss to you, kid, in one moment, but, there's a part of the Judge Andrew Napolitano's speech at the Kingston rally that really relates very, very strongly to this, where Napolitano, goes over this concise but pretty thorough history of the government's annoyance at the First Amendment, starting just, 9 years after the Bill of Rights with the Alien and Sedition Act. Yeah. So he makes a good case in that speech that this is very ghastly, and it's dystopian now because of the sort of big tech influence on our society. But it's not anything new. The government has pretty much always regretted codifying free speech. Yeah. Since they did it, they've basically regretted it the entire time.
As somebody who is the world reigning heavyweight champion of being censored 9 times in a row, I'm very concerned about what lies ahead for us, even after this election cycle. Being hit with, YouTube saying that, we were saying that Biden wasn't president, or medical misinformation, or saying that Jimmy Dore was right calling out the squad, or either that just saying, hey, we got to protect these whistleblowers. As somebody who's dealt with censorship 9 times in a row.
Go ahead,
And,
rattle off more examples. Get us 9 strikes at once.
well,
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
okay, sorry about that.
I'm joking. I'm fucking with you. I'm good. Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. Well, no. This is the point.
Yeah.
Is that what
And it
struck
hurts
3 years ago doesn't anymore because it turns out to be true.
Yeah, and the thing is, like YouTube and the way the algorithm runs, I mean, even trying to reach out to a person from YouTube is going to be completely nuts.
Sure.
And you have so many politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, who are on board with the censorship. I'm going to say that again. They are on board with it. No matter who sits in the White House or who controls the Senate and House, they don't want any of us to be sharing free information or communicating with each other. And the fact that you have this being cheered and applauded by the establishment means they want to get rid of the First Amendment. And the First Amendment is fundamentally important. Now, for those who say, oh, well, gee, kid, if you're a free speech absolutist, does that mean you want to have bad people speak? Well, no, obviously I don't, but they have that right. So if you're going to silence them, you silence everybody. But I like to think the world is filled with good people. You want to know who doesn't think that way? The politicians and the neoliberal media who want you to be silent and submissive to all of their policies and what they want done. And the internet has been a way in which we can exchange ideas freely as a free society. I am disturbed by this entire commentary by, again, I guess, rundown dime store version of Henry Munster or the Munster guy, whatever, John Kerry.
Yeah.
It just goes back to saying something I've warned way back when we were on radio, when Alex Jones was deplatformed. And I said, hey, this means everybody's going to be on the chopping block, because if they're going to do that to him, they're going to do that to all of us. And I lost a lot of people who said, well, how could you go to bat for him? I was like, I'm not going to bat for him. I'm telling you, there's a dangerous precedent being set. And I'm seeing it happen out in real time, to which it gets these same people saying, hey, how come I can't post this on Twitter? Or how come I can't post this? I'm like, yeah, I warned you in 2018 this was going to happen. And here we are now. So protect the First Amendment, because it is our only way of really telling these jagoff bastards to go F themselves.
Well, yeah. And, the other thing that's just remarkable about that, when you hear, John Kerry talk about we need the right to govern, as if, winning a censorship mandate is the way to, protect people from disinformation. The best way to actually protect against disinformation is to reestablish trust in official sources, official quote unquote, like the government and the mainstream media. You know how you win trust over, if you're the government? Actually do something that makes people's lives better. Like if you actually, demonstrate to the public that you have their interests at heart, they're a lot more likely to believe what you say. But the reason why people don't believe what the government says is because they don't believe that the government is on their side. And that is the concession that the liberal establishment refuses to make. They refuse to make the concession of, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to improve the quality of life of the average person, because that is what builds trust. But they don't want to do that. They want to keep things exactly as they are and browbeat everyone into accepting that. That really is the mission of institutions like the World Economic Forum, is that the trajectory of capitalism, the trajectory of globalism is on one track. It's not even changeable, much less reversible. So what we have to do is just force people to accept that. Force people to accept that through censorship. And the problem with that in their eyes is that in the United States, you have a First Amendment. So that blocks them from doing everything they want. Of course, they figure out ways around that. They always have, as Napolitano said in his monologue, which we're going to play a piece of in a later segment. And then I'll be publishing a more comprehensive version of that monologue as a separate piece to the channel. But yeah, I mean, that is such a major fight right now. And it's, it is an American fight. It's also a fight around the world. In countries without First Amendments, they are able to go a lot further. And here they seem to reserve these sort of extreme measures for people who they have for whom they have extreme distaste, like Scott Ritter, like the African People's Socialist Party, right? Like Julian Assange, even though he wasn't an American. They pretty much, strong-armed the UK into torturing him half to death before finally they showed some mercy in a campaign season because they felt they had to. But yeah, that is one of the major fights of our time, and it has to be a cross-partisan fight. And so that's why it's really important to sort of coalition build around that amongst a few other major issues, obviously.
And if you are one of these people, no matter whether you're left or right, if you are going to be calling yourself a free speech absolutist, please, for the love of God, okay, really mean it, okay? Because I've run into people on the left and the right who say, "Oh, we are free speech absolutists," until they're like, "Well, that person should be censored, that should be canceled." It's either you are for it or you're not. Because if you believe in the First Amendment, you got to go all in. There is no compromise. And I get it that there's bad, stupid, idiotic people out there. I get it. But as soon as you start saying, "Oh, let's add this little caveat here and there," well, then you're no better than the jagoff politicians, the corporate overlords, corporate media trying to censor us, okay? It's either you are with it 100%, and yes, you can have a disagreement with a person, or you're not. I am all in for the First Amendment because I've nearly seen my channel get destroyed so many times because of the censorship, because of the establishment, because of all of it. And I stand against that. I despise it. I despise it in all of its forms. And you know what, folks? When you see your favorite content creators struggle, especially when they lose their platform, no matter what their genre is, it is a very difficult pathway to reestablish connections and communications with your audience. And this is something that I stand against. And I dread for the future, and people need to start really educating themselves about the First Amendment and protecting and preserving it, because it is probably one of the few bastions in which people can freely speak out. We lose it, it's gone forever.
Well, yeah, and what you said is important there. The point that there are assholes out there that do make it kind of a drag. Yeah. Like Twitter is kind of a drag. Like you have to now, when you see something there, if it's not sourced, you have to source it before you run with it. As someone on the content creator side, we fell for one of the AI videos, an AI rendered video that was manipulated without our knowledge. So we had to come out in the next show and say, "We're sorry, we took that down," because there are times when you can get punked, especially now in the AI age. And, because Twitter is freer now than it was under Jack Dorsey, of course, not nearly free enough, as has been demonstrated time after time.
Yep.
It does create extra headaches. Like you do have to do more work in terms of really vetting everything you see.
Absolutely.
That's the price of doing business. I'd much rather be in a position where I have to vet information to make sure it's not junk than be in a position where I have to think twice before tweeting half the shit I tweet. Like I'd much rather, like, doing that extra work is the price of doing business. That's the price of living in a free speech, or functioning in this case in a free speech environment, or at least relative to the Jack Dorsey days.
And what I tell my audience when I do the morning show is like, look, just because you're listening to Hardlands Media, please check out other sources of information. And you may not have to agree with them politically, but please see other sources, other people, compare and contrast, and come up to your own conclusions. But you have to be a well-rounded individual in this day and age. This smartphone, we're getting information every single millisecond, okay? We're in a day and age where information is at our fingertips. We have the Library of Alexandria in our back pocket. So it is our due diligence on DueDissidence that people keep on, doing their own research too. That's how you, the audience, also become informed in your own way as well. So we can, dare I say it, stay a step ahead of the censorship.
Please clap.